Welcome everybody, welcome back to Homestead Heart. And today I am in the kitchen, you all, and I am getting ready to answer two of my most asked questions in just about every canning video I have ever done. I always get these two questions, one or the other, or sometimes both, from different viewers, always, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and answer those questions today. As you can see, I am sitting here in front of my Presto pressure canner, and I'm using this one because this one is lightweight. I have my All-American pressure canner behind me, but it's gonna be pretty much the same for these two canners for me. All right, I think I have that All-American 931, and if I'm mistaken, my friend from DC can correct me. And this is my Presto. I forgot the numbers on this one, but it is the one with the dial gauge. Okay. All right, you all. So what are those questions? Number one, Mr. H, Mrs. H, is there water in your canner? I saw you put the jars in, but I didn't see you put any water in the canner. So is there water in the canner? And number two is, Mrs. H, how much water goes in my canner? How much water should I put in my canner, right? So I get those two questions quite often. So I'm going to go ahead and answer them, but I'm going to answer them based on my equipment. Okay, not yours, mine. And the reason why I say that is because based upon the type of pressure canner you have, the water levels could be different. Okay, but first thing is first, is there water in the canner? Always there's water in the canner, whether you are pressure canning, water bath canning, water bath canning, steam canning, right? There's always water in the canners. But what determines how much is the brand of the canner itself, okay? All right. So now if you are water bath canning or steam canning, it's pretty much the same process. However, one of them requires way less water, right? A water bath canner, if you are putting a jar in the water bath, whatever size jars you're canning in the water bath, whether it's the half pints, quarts, whatever it is, the water level of that canner, okay, the water level, in that canner has to come at least 2 inches above the lid of the jar that you have in the water bath, okay? Now that's your water bath canner. In your steam canner, your jars are not even sitting in water. They're sitting on a tray and the water is beneath it, right? The water is beneath it. You're bringing it to a boil. It has a lid that you put on and it steam cans your food. So there's no water even on the jars themselves, right? So the water bath and the steam canning, the processing times will be the same for most jars, right? However, the water levels are going to be different because those are two different types of canners, and they possibly could even be two different brands of canners, okay? So that's for water bath. Now, when it comes to pressure canning, depending on your pressure canner, that will determine how much water goes in your pressure canner. For my canners, there's 3 inches of water. 3 inches of water in my canners. That's both for my All-American and my Presto. Now that 3 inches from my canner is the equivalent of 3 quarts of water, okay? Now, one of the things that you can do if you are brand new to canning and you have a new canner and you're trying to figure out, what do I do? I mean, do I use a tape measure to put down in here to see where 3 inches is? Or do I use, do I have to measure it every single time, you know? Well, I'm going to tell you, initially, it's okay if you want to take a measuring tape and get 3 inches. That's perfectly fine, right? So if you do that, Instead of having to measure every single time, what you could do is literally just take a Sharpie. Once you know where that water level is going to be, because once you filled it up, you see where that water level is, right? All you got to do is just take a Sharpie, and you can literally take that Sharpie and just put a little line and just mark where your 3 inches is going to be, right? Or your 3 quarts is going to be. You could just put that little mark inside of your canner. This permanent marker, that line ain't going nowhere for a long time, right? And if it does start to fade, well, by that time, you will have learned well enough with your canner, just by eyeballing it, where the 3 inches of water is going to be. What was it? You'll learn where that 3 inches of water is going to be, right? You'll learn. So whether it's 3 inches, 3 quarts, whatever your canner's instructions tell you to do, that's what you follow, because there are so many different pressure canners on the market now, okay? And so I'm just going to recommend that you read your canner's instructions. Well, Mrs. H, I don't have instructions for my canner. My canner was given to me, or I found my canner at a thrift store. Okay, if that's the case, if you have a Presto or an All-American, you can either go on the website or you can call the company and see what resources they have for you, so that either they can email you something, or that maybe there's a PDF on their website that you can download and save or print, so that you'll have the care instructions for your pressure canner or your water bath canner, okay? So you're going to have to kind of get in and do some research to get that information on your own, okay? And plus, that information is good to have. It's always just good to have the instructions to your canners. I keep mine, even though I use it all the time. I have it just in case I need to refer to it. I'm sliding off. Just in case I need to refer to it for any reason whatsoever. All right, you all? So I hope I have answered that question plain and simple. All right, plain and simple. You're going to always have water in your canner. Always put water in your canner. And then you want to be mindful when you're canning, you want to make sure you're paying attention to your canner, so you don't run into issues where you could possibly lose too much water from your canner, and then your canner can run dry. And that has happened to so many before. In fact, it's happened to me. So now what I mean by that, sometimes we can put food in this canner, put the lid on, and we waiting for it to come up to pressure so it could start venting. And then something could happen. And then you're out of the house or anything, and it's been an hour and a half. And you come back and steam everywhere, right? And your canner's just going crazy. Are you going to continue? Are you going to just put a weight on and then start the processing time for your canner? No. If you've been going a long time, no, absolutely not. Right? No. And now I've stepped away and my canner's been venting, and I'll have to, start my timer for 10 minutes and whatnot. But if I know I've only been gone for about 15 minutes, even after it start venting, if I know I've only been gone 15, 20 minutes, I know I'm good, right? I know I'm good. But if my canner has been pushing out all that steam for an hour and a half or an hour or whatever, no, you got to turn the fire off, let your canner cool down, and you're going to start this again, because you have to take the jars are going to be very hot now, right? They're going to be very hot. So once this canner cools enough for you to open it, not that there's pressure in it that'll hurt you, because it's not, but you are going to turn this off, allow things to settle for a few minutes, take the lid off, and you're going to have to see how much water is in this canner, because if you just start a processing time after it's been venting for an hour, and you got to process something for an hour or hour and a half or 100 minutes even, you could run the risk of this canner running dry. And if that happens, y'all, it's done. Okay, you can forget it. All right. So you just want to make sure you keep an eye on your canner, making sure your canner does not run dry, even with your 3 inches of water. So that's why I always say, you know, when you're canning, you can't go to the grocery store with this canner on the stove because it's got the can for an hour. You can't leave and be like, I'm just going to run to the store real quick. Don't do that. Stay with your canner, okay? So y'all, I hope I have answered your questions. I hope that that information helps you. There's always water in the canner. How much water depends on your pressure canner or your water bath canner, okay? So make sure you have your instruction booklets. Make sure if you have a used canner before you try to use it, make sure that you get the instructions, right? And once you get the instructions, you can check that canner thoroughly to make sure it even works properly, right? So y'all, that's going to do it for this video. Again, I hope you found it helpful. If you did, give our video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos we upload to our channel. And thank you all again so much for watching Homestead Heart. Peace and blessings to each and every one of you. And I'm going to see y'all in the next video.